this and make sure it works. Howell Woltz, AKA 20758-058. I'd like to share my story with you. It began early one foggy morning in April of 2006. I remember going in to check on my youngest son. I kissed him on the forehead, smelled his hair. Little did I know that'd be the last time I ever smelled that innocent scent. I remember also thinking how wonderful it was to be home. I'd been working and earning a doctorate degree abroad, and we came back for vacation. I also remember smelling cherry laurel blossoms that morning as I walked to the car. But I never made it to the end of the road. I was kidnapped by federal agents from another district. They returned to my home, lured my wife outside, grabbed her in her nightgown. They wanted me to testify against this famous North Carolina politician. But they needed the leverage because they wanted me to say something that wasn't true. Now, they knew the truth because I'd written this report about the man 10 years ago. In it, I clearly stated that we knew of no criminal conduct. But they wanted me to say the opposite. In fact, they said if I would say exactly what they told me to, they would let us go. What they asked me to say was not true. I couldn't do it. They said if you don't do what we tell you to do and say, we'll hold both you and your wife in jail until you change your mind. I said, this can't be America. And off with us they drove, leaving two little boys alone and asleep in the home. I thought, who are these people? Well, they had a problem because we lived in the Middle District, and the U.S. Attorney's Office there refused to be part of what it called a sham prosecution. So they had to take us to the Western District of North Carolina, jurisdiction attached in Charlotte. But the judge called their story bizarre and ordered to release us immediately, unsecured bond. But that's not what they did. In fact, they put us in chains all the way across the state to the very court of a judge who was behind the vendetta. The man in the picture had tried to keep him off the federal bench, and it was payback time. He threw us back in jail, though he had no more authority in the case than you or me. I thought, how can this happen? The law required us to be tried in Charlotte within 70 days or released in 90. But I quickly realized they're not going to follow that law either, because they brought me into a custodial interrogation. The room was full of agents and prosecutors. I'm in an orange jumpsuit with chains. But I quickly, within minutes, I proved how these charges were made up, false, impossible. One of the agents just started laughing at me. He said, okay, dude, yeah, you lawyers not here? Yeah, we made them up, and we're going to hold you and your wife until you say what we tell you to say. I turned to the prosecutor and I said, you just heard that. He admitted we did nothing wrong. I'll never forget this. The prosecutor just leaned back, got this smirk on his face, and said, Mr. Woltz, all of you out there have done something. We just haven't gotten around to you yet. When I refused to lie for them, they threw me in solitary in the murderer's pod. It's called that for a reason. When that didn't work, they put me on the road time and time again on what they call diesel therapy, where they ride you around from jail to jail and prison to prison. You're always the new guy. Somebody tries you. You're sleeping on a dirty mat in a corner on the floor because all the bunks are taken. The idea is to keep you away from your family and your lawyer so you can't get any help. You never know what's coming next or when they're going to drag you out in the middle of the night and take you somewhere else. It's a form of torture that I hope none of you in this room ever experience, though statistically, 1 in 4 will. Well, they returned me to Charlotte eventually. By then, it was the following year. They were still holding us illegally. A guard came in my cell. She said, Mr. Woltz, you've got to do whatever you've got to do to get your wife out of here. We've already taken her to the hospital for dead on one occasion. Well, you can imagine I didn't sleep a wink that night. The next morning, I called the prosecutor's office. I said, I will plead guilty to anything in exchange for the immediate release of my wife, but I won't testify falsely against anyone. Well, they couldn't take me to the court of jurisdiction because they'd already let us go. So they put us in chains, took us back across the state I went to prison for 87 months, not for any crime committed, but because I refused to lie for them in the conspiracy. But I spent that 7 years studying law, and over the course of those years, I worked on approximately 400 cases of other men, tried to help them get relief. But I saw this same thread of prosecutorial misconduct and outright judicial lawlessness in almost every one. It was ubiquitous. It was everywhere. They broke the law to put people in prison. I thought, how can this happen? I also learned that there was no such charge as that for which I was in prison, and that the judge in the Eastern District had no authority to put me there. In other words, they had to let me go. That was the one happy day of those 7 years, was the day my mother found out I was innocent and we could prove it. My brother immediately called this wonderful man, Judge Art Strickland, a federal judge in Virginia. He was a good friend of his, and he said, please, look at my brother's case. Go talk to him. He did. He came to see me in prison, went through it, and he said he's right. There's no such thing as a sole conspirator, and the Eastern District judge had zero authority in the case. They got to let him go. Now, this is a former federal judge, so he immediately writes the chief judge in the Western District, says, we got to have a hearing, expose what was done to this man, get him released. But they didn't want it exposed. They didn't want me released. He never even responded to the letter. Judge Strickland wrote him 2 and 3 times, still never responded. So we began filing appeals. But every appeal we filed in the Western District, the judge in the Eastern District reached over, poached, and dismissed. So no one would find out what he did. So then we turned to the Court of Public Opinion, which is the only court, I believe, in America that still works. I wrote a book called Justice Denied. The judge wrote the foreword, helped me get it published. And Savannah College of Art and Design had a brilliant young student here who did a film on it, and it's still winning awards on the circuit a year later since SCAD released it. But the Court of Public Opinion can't get people wrongly convicted and imprisoned out of jail. So I've dedicated the last 2 years to trying to figure out, first of all, how did we get to this state? And second of all, is there a solution? And that's why I'm here today. I figured out what the problem is, and I think I've got the solution, and I need your help in making it happen. All right, the problems are twofold. Judicially, we got off on the wrong track starting in 1967 with a case called Pearson versus Ray, and a string of decisions since then where the judiciary granted themselves complete immunity for anything they do to us as long as they're at work when they do it. They can violate our constitutional rights, ignore the rules of criminal procedure, completely trash the statutory protections we have, and nobody can do anything about it. They are immune. They can act with immunity and impunity, and they do every day. It reminds me of Lord Acton's axiom, you may recall, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, that's a pretty good description of our judiciary today. And here's the biggest problem, is that Congress has given them the tools to do it, because Congress was only authorized to punish 2 crimes, piracy and counterfeiting. That's it. The rest was withheld for the states to pass laws and punish. That's how many human behaviors they have now outlawed. You cannot go through a day in America without committing felonies. In fact, Harvard Law School estimates that each of us commit 3 felonies a day. And these laws are so vague and obscure, we don't even know it. So when it's your turn to be queen for a day, trust me, you're going down. So this is a huge problem, and look what it's led to. 25% of the American public, if I can get the slide to work, now have a criminal record. Let me tell you what that means if you don't know. You lose your right to vote. You can't defend yourself and your family. Your Second Amendment rights are gone along with the others. You pay for federal programs, but you can't access them. And you got a great big scarlet F on your chest for the rest of your life. With only 5% of the world's population in America, we have 25% of its prisoners. Please let that sink in for a minute. And we've gone from number 1 in freedom in the world in 1941, we rank 43rd today. Americans are packing up and leaving this country in droves. In fact, they estimate that 3 million Americans, well, learn how to use the equipment, Hal. 3 million Americans are packing up and heading for the border this year alone. That's 1% of the population of this nation packing up and getting the hell out of here. They used to die trying to get here for freedom. Now they're dying to get out and go somewhere else. And the scariest part, in my opinion, look at this, we're reversing migrations. More Americans are moving to Mexico this year than Mexicans coming to America. I never would have thought that possible. And it's our best and our brightest, our businessmen, our entrepreneurs, the people that provide 2/3 of the jobs in this nation, and our innovators, because business startups are down by 50% since this regulatory binge began. All right, that's the problem. I'm running out of time. Here's the solution. An ombudsman. We need an ombudsman now in every federal district. This would be an elected official, nonpartisan, non-political. This isn't about right and left. This is about right and wrong. Someone who can hold our elected official to their promises and oaths. Judges, prosecutors, bureaucrats, and yes, politicians will be held to the rule of law. So I'm asking you to go to our new website, because these people will be able to investigate and prosecute public officials who act unconstitutionally, but they will also be able to grant relief, unconditional relief, to people who are abused by these politicians and judges and prosecutors. It's an idea whose time has come. It's not my idea. It was pioneered in Sweden, but 140 countries around the world are now doing this. So I'm asking you to turn your phones on and go to ombudsmannow.com and join our petition. I'm asking you to do this for our country. This is a great nation, and it's worth saving. I'm also asking you to do it for your family. I don't want you to be one of the 1 in 4. It ain't no fun. But I also want you to do it for yourselves so you don't become a number. Thank you very much. God bless you and God bless America.